What up, and welcome in. This is the league update number 3 for the Golden Era. We are now through December 16th. Trade season can officially begin for all those players that were signed during the offseason, but we're starting with two pieces of breaking news. The first one up is Ezekiel Morrow has been suspended indefinitely by the NBA for his role in an altercation between himself and a member of the Celtics traveling party. That came in the aftermath of the Raptors' overtime win over Boston in Toronto. The individual with Boston Celtics that was involved in that had been transported to Toronto General Hospital, shortly released thereafter, but Morrow suspended indefinitely by the NBA. And then news out of Golden State, Steve Kerr announced his sudden retirement from the organization after 18 seasons with the Warriors. They've named Chris Adams his replacement, the 34-year-old who'd been on the staff for the last 3 years in San Francisco. You can read more about both of those over on Operation Sports. Both of them are linked here in the description as well. Let's move to the most recent things going on. We'll start with the standings. We've got the Warriors sitting atop the Western Conference with 21 wins, while the Thunder, Blazers, and Suns each have 17 in what is quickly becoming a very crowded top 7 in the Western Conference. On the other side, the Pacers, the best record in the NBA, coming in at 22-5, while the Bucks sit in second, and the Bulls in the top 3. Keep an eye out for Miami, though. They've won 7 straight. They've jumped into the top 6, and it's making what should be a pretty exciting battle there for the avoiding of the play-in in the Eastern Conference. Let's head to our league leaders, where Jalen Justice sits atop the scoring mark, 36.9. Why does he come out of nowhere? He finally hits after missing some games earlier in injury. He finally hits the required number of games to be eligible. He's at nearly 37 points per game. Tyrese Alston, Tobias Bell coming in at 34 points apiece. Rebounding, no change. It's Rashawn Matthews, 17 per game, a huge lead over the rest of the crowd. Sasha Kasparov, Abiz Ojale round out the ever-changing top 5. Cameron Sullivan still sitting there in second. Our assist leader, it's Kareem Robinson back on top after a tough month from LaMelo Ball, but the top 5, for the most part, remains pretty consistent in terms of the names and faces, all of them above that 9.3 threshold that Luka Doncic is currently sitting at. Steals, though, Tyrese Alston, he stays on top. 2 steals per game. We've seen those numbers steadily crawl below the 2-point mark a couple months ago. That was all above it. But here we are with our top 5. Tyrese Alston and Ty Outlaw doing battle for the top slot there. Savion White trying to stay within reach, but likely no chance to reach the top of our block leaders, where Cameron Sullivan, 3.6 blocks, 1.5 more than the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Rashawn Matthews. Devin Anderson, the rookie, Cavante Kennard in Chicago, the number 1 overall pick, having his presence felt on the defensive end, and of course, Abiz Ojale in Minnesota. Let's get some storylines from around the NBA. We'll give you 4 of them. We'll start in Golden State, who just took down the Brooklyn Nets to cap off what was a pretty solid start of their month. They've started to get some contributions from guys not named: Javon Roll, Deontay Dixon, Jonathan Kuminga. We'll start with Jalen House, the rookie. He's been inserted into the starting spot at the 2 guard with the injury of Jaheim Briggs. You can learn more about that injury and some of the impacts of the Warriors' fledgling depth, the article written by The Athletic over on Operation Sports. But House, 15.1 points per game through the first 2 weeks of December, 45% from deep. We thought Golden State might have had to look outside of their organization to find the Shane Ruffin scoring replacement. Perhaps they had it there with the rookie House. Javon Roll has also upped his three-point shooting. He's nailing 47% of his triples after shooting just 38% in November. Again, more information on the Warriors over on Operation Sports, and also linked here in the description. Let's head to Brooklyn. They got the return of Louis Morgan, but that does not spell good things. They are 0-2, including that loss to Golden State in his 2 games back from injury. They are 17-7 without him on the floor. They have really struggled to kind of find that camaraderie with him and Brighton Reed. Brighton Reed, without him, was averaging 34 points and had games in which he shot less than 20 occurred just 4 times. That was all without Louis Morgan. In his 2 games back, Louis Morgan's returned, Brighton Reed has taken 15 and 16 shots. So we're seeing the usage fall off a cliff, essentially, for Brighton Reed now that Louis Morgan is back in the fold. Another injury return was Utah. The Jazz get their All-NBA center, Julius Walker, back from injury. They are 13-3. With Julius Walker in the starting lineup. They've won their last 9 games in which he has started, including the last 6 since he's returned. So it's good to get him back. He has been rolling for the Jazz, who are rolling back up into the fight to try to get out of the play-in. A couple one-man bands going on in Toronto and Sacramento. Let's start with Toronto. The Raptors, of course, dealing with the suspension of Ezekiel Morrow. They are also without Terrence Clarke and Shane Ruffin due to injuries. That means Jalen Justice is going it alone. They had been playing pretty well with both Justice and Morrow. They had a 7-game winning streak until that suspension. In that first game post-suspension, Justice goes for 70 points against the Washington Wizards, but they have been inconsistent since then. The hope is Clarke and Ruffin return here within the next couple months of next couple weeks of December, though no guarantees on that. Meanwhile, Sacramento, Tyrese Alston is also going it alone thanks to injuries to Jason Sanders and Parker Pollard. Of course, Sanders, the huge offseason acquisition for the Kings. Since November 30th, Tyrese Alston has 2 50-point games and 40-plus in 7 of his last 9, with the other 2 being 37 and 38-point nights. They are 3-5 without Jason Sanders in the lineup thus far this season, 12-7 with him. He's expected to be back shortly. You can catch more storylines over on Operation Sports and The Bounce, published by The Athletic. Again, all of that linked in the description. Feel free to head on over, check that out. Let's look ahead. We've got 2 nationally broadcast games on the docket. First up, we're going Utah and Minnesota on December 17th. That new look, refined Utah Jazz squad. Big matchup of Julius Walker and Abiz Ojale underneath. And, of course, Darius Dixon, the All-NBA guard for the Jazz on the wing. And then our second game on Christmas Eve, Golden State hosting the San Antonio Spurs. Mateo Delgado, Carlos Fernandez come to town trying to right the ship and take down the 3-time defending champions. As always, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notifications. Why not? Don't want to miss a second of it. Head on over to Operation Sports. You've got all the links in the description to stay up to date. Golden Era Podcast is coming up next. Thanks for tuning in.